The Kenyan highlands has some of the richest agricultural land in the world. Land which may be Kenya's ticket out of poverty. It's morning on the Sunripe Organic Farm. 200 laborers have just arrived to start their day working the fields. They come from all over the district, often on foot, because jobs are scarce. Sunripe pays double the average wage of $1 a day, so many wait a long time to start work here. Mark Macharia waited a year.
Pangu naweza comment niseme kama vile tuko sahi Kenya kupata kazi sio kitu rahisi hivyo. So tuna appreciate ile tuko nayo.
These farm hands are often the only breadwinner in their extended family. It's hard work here. Like many of Kenya's most successful farms, Sunripe grows organic produce by hand, without machines or chemical fertilizers.
It will be a mixture of soil and compost.
John Ndungu is Sunripe's manager. He spent years building up the farm, introducing innovations like dense shrubs used as barriers to stop beetles and worms to break down compost.
We control pests like thrips, whiteflies, aphids, caterpillars, using chilies, using garlic, using fermented milk, and all that works pretty well for us.
This dedication has paid off. After years of investment, they've been able to meet the stringent standards of European watchdog agencies like the UK Soil Association, which means top dollar in Western supermarkets. But all this could be about to change as the idea of food miles takes hold in Europe, and John faces losing his biggest export market.
Well, it's becoming a concern, basically in the UK market, that a lot of produce coming from Kenya or from Africa being air freighted is contributing to carbon emissions.
And how seriously is that being pursued now, in your understanding?
That was taken very seriously. There was a lot of concern. People were worried. It was sending shivers up the spines of those involved in the industry.
Now rumors are spreading across the farm that there may be bad times ahead.
Hizo machakula zenye zinaka imports zitakuwa na shida, zinaweza fungwa at any time.
Ile jambo litakuwa jambo lizuri, maana hizi shamba zina create, tuseme zinasaidia watu kupata kazi. So ikiweza fungwa, unakuta kupata kazi sio kitu rahisi.
These people depend on us for their livelihood, for the livelihood of their extended families, as a company, we have invested in land, in equipment, in a lot of things that if this is to be suddenly withdrawn, it has a big effect to us, primarily, to people whom we employ, and to stakeholders also, because there are a lot of people who are depending on our operations.
In fact, Kenya's Ministry of Agriculture says that the nation's entire economy is being propelled by the boom in agricultural exports.
The growth rate of the country was about 5.8%, while agriculture sector contributed to about 14% in growth.
Right.
Yeah, and most of this was due to horticulture.
The cold London morning starts early for Paul Jardine, who hand delivers boxes of locally grown organic vegetables. He's at the forefront of the food miles movement that could spell trouble for Kenya's farmers.
Yeah, there's always a pleasure in seeing them, that you're giving them nice food.
Unlike most of the fruit and vegetables eaten in the United Kingdom, nothing here has been air freighted.
Oh, they said it wasn't going to rain today.
For customers like Anna Ashton, food miles is a critical factor in what she buys.
Ooh, and some bacon. And some burgers. We do try and buy locally produced food wherever possible, or food that sort of takes that into consideration. So, you know, we're not buying food that's been air freighted. We, try to buy seasonal food, and it's something that my husband and I have been sort of talking about quite a lot, and it just seems to make a big difference to us. We actually sort of put that sort of thought into where our food comes from.
It's interesting that you say that you don't want to buy food that's air freighted right off the top of your head. Why?
Because of the contribution it makes to global warming. As I understand it, air freight or air travel is a huge contributor to global warming. So anything we can do to sort of try and stop that situation, I think, is very helpful.
The Ashton family is part of a growing trend. It's called the local food movement.
Oh, it's on the floor. What happened? You squeezed it. And then what happened? You squeezed it. And it fell out.
An obsession with local food is moving into the British mainstream.
Green consumption must be the norm and not something for, the educated middle classes to do. We need everyone to be able to afford green products. And we went to
Trevor Datson is a spokesman for Tesco, one of the largest supermarket chains in the world.
We're actually going to cut the amount of products on our shelves that are air freighted by 1% or to 1%.
Down to 1%.
Down to 1%. We've already achieved that target.
The remaining air-freighted products that are squeezed into the 1% allowance are being clearly labeled with bright blue stickers as a warning to climate-conscious consumers. It's a major shift in a country that imports half of its vegetables and 95% of its fruit. And Tesco is not alone. The most powerful organic certification body in the United Kingdom is taking a hard look at food miles.
There was an expectation, in particular with regards to organic, where we have very strong environmental principles, that perhaps air freight wasn't in line with those environmental principles, and that consumers would expect organic food not necessarily to be air freighted. So that was something which was put to us by the public, essentially.
The Soil Association has been encouraging Africa's farmers to grow organic export produce for more than a decade. But worries about climate change have forced it to think again.
Certainly the research that we've seen is actually when you look at the supply chain and you look at production, processing, packaging and distribution, air freight is the prominent sort of emitter of carbon and greenhouse gases within that whole supply chain.
That triggered alarm bells at the Soil Association. It's now looking at a range of options to help fight climate change.
We presented 5 options in our consultative paper, which were all options which are being considered by other people at the moment, and those were labelling air freight, carbon offsetting, a selective ban with exemptions in cases of development, for example, or a complete ban. And these are things which are being implemented by other organisations and businesses.
Back in Kenya, advocacy groups are strongly opposed.
We encourage Soil Association not to take this stand for now, as the result will be an economic disaster for the country.
The reason it will be an economic disaster is because fertile land is Kenya's principal resource. People living here enjoy a year-round harvest, and the lives of the farmers create very little carbon pollution. The average Kenyan generates around 3% of the carbon pollution of a person living in Britain.
It's not Africans who are causing global warming. It's the developed countries who are causing global warming. But who is taking who is suffering more? It's Africans. And you see, even the developed countries like UK are still proposing to put more stringent measures that will make more Africans suffer. It's a paradox, an ironic paradox.
Kenyan growers are suspicious that the food miles debate is just a front for protecting European farmers.
Indeed, it's just another non-tariff barrier to trade. We have proved to the world that we can compete with European farmers. Why then should organizations like Soil Association create other barriers just to restrict more Africans from accessing the premium markets?
To back their argument, Kenya's exporters point out that transport is only one part of a product's carbon footprint. To see its total environmental impact, you also have to look at the pollution caused by its packaging and production. This is especially true for the organic fresh-cut flowers that are big business in Kenya, and also a target of air freight bans. Heated greenhouses are not needed here, unlike in Europe, where heating crops is a big source of carbon pollution.
But I want to say that the air freighting forms a minimal percentage of the total energy that is used in the production line of any produce. So targeting that alone is not fair.
How do you operate differently than a UK farmer?
UK, for example, is 100% mechanized, I would say. We are only about 15% mechanized. We do all our operations by manual labor. We employ people to do a lot of things that the UK farmer does using machinery.
You know, I mean, that argument is just complete and utter crap, and it's just people playing sort of PR games to, to justify their, their commercial interests.
Guy Watson runs the Riverford Organic Farm in South Devon, England. It's one of England's first and biggest organic businesses.
I mean, we've looked at the carbon footprint of what we do here. It looks as if the energy used in moving the vegetables, even just around the UK, let alone not considering imports, is 3 or 4 times greater than the energy used to produce them.
And he believes that air freighting over thousands of kilometers is many times worse.
You're getting to a situation where the actual transport outweighs any saving in energy and production just many, many times over, maybe as much as 100 times over. I mean, there may be arguments in favour of production in Kenya. There may be some socio-economic gains, but there are absolutely no environmental gains.
A handful of Londoners are so concerned about food miles that they've decided to reduce theirs to 0.
Not so many slugs today.
Lost this one.
Dan and Alex Spurner moved out of their inner city flat in May in search of more space.
This is butternut squash, and this is a very small one.
Really one of the priorities was to have a garden, so that immediately took us out of areas that we had lived in when we were renting, and moved us slightly further out of town. So that's how we came to be here.
Was that a worthwhile trade-off?
Yes. Absolutely. So this has been a source of so much for us. Lots of jam making, preserves, pear ice cream. There's only so many pears you can eat.
A surprising amount of their staple food grows right here in their backyard.
The vegetables, I mean, the beetroot, the carrots, things like that. I mean, they provide all the vegetables we've needed. We've
pretty much had all our veg from this
onions
garden.
And garlic we've had. They were in pots as well. So that's been great. And we just you get creative.
For Dan and Alex, daily food preparation takes a little more time and effort, but they believe that the inconvenience is worth it if it helps to fight climate change.
People kind of take the mickey a little bit, but I think there's definitely a growing sense that this is the way forward, and that people are going to have to make more of an effort in how they kind of structure their lives, because I think, as global warming increases, this is going to be how people produce their food.
The guys down the road.
If the burners are right and their homegrown food is the future for Europe, it's a future with little room for Africa's farmers. That's a dilemma that they can't resolve.
We don't just care about what lands on our table, we do care about what goes on in the world as well. We don't necessarily have the answers for the bigger picture, but certainly see what the problems are. And as with all things that are worth fixing, there's probably no quick fix.
Back in Kenya, Kairu Kingoru farms a tiny organic plot outside of Nairobi. He's poured everything he has into this land, hoping it will pay off in export dollars in the future. He's one of hundreds of smallholders whose investment is now under threat.
If we don't get good market to sell our product, it means people will suffer.
And climate change is already making life hard for Kiarii. Seasonal rainfall is becoming less predictable every year, seriously affecting his harvest.
In August, from July, August, now this is September, now it is all rain. So there is a lot of change in the weather pattern in Kenya these days.
There's a paradox at work here. Kenyans are being hurt by actions taken to stem climate change, but Africa will be hit hard if nothing is done to slow global warming.
Let's repeat it again.
And so far, the Kenyan government has done very little to prepare for the potential ravages of climate change. Has the Ministry of Agriculture made any plans for how it will affect how it does business as temperatures go up over the next century? Not yet.
Not yet.
Faced with a future of higher oil prices and a carbon-conscious public, Britain's Soil Association says that regardless of what they decide about the future of Africa's organic farmers, Kenya can't rely on air freight forever.
Actually, this is inherently unsustainable, and there's a responsibility to the people in the West who are buying these products in encouraging a trade which is so dependent on a fossil fuel. It throws the issues of climate change and development into sharp relief. It really does challenge us about how we go forward in addressing climate change.
Even British organic farmers who benefit from limits on air-freighted imports believe that a ban targeting the world's poorest countries may be too politically hot to push through.
The suggestion that some, middle-class person in the West, who's probably still driving around in their 4x4, is denying that sort of potential for an improvement in living standards in a developing country is just politically, is just not acceptable. It won't happen.
Guy Watson may be confident of the outcome, but Kenya's farmers are still anxiously awaiting the Soil Association's decision. It's expected within days, and for Africans, the big challenge will be living with the consequences.
Hiyo ni si mzuri, kwa sababu atakuwa ameharibia watu wengi sana. Kenya mzima tunategemea agriculture, tunategemea chakula, hizi greens zote, karibu kila kitu tunategemea hiyo. Kwa hivyo sasa ukulima ikifungiwa huko, nadhani ni very unfair.
To make sure that you may require effort.